Hi, Rosanna. It's absolutely a big pleasure to host you in this Thought Leadership webcast. And before I start, I want to introduce Rosanna. Her full name is Rosanna D. Oliveira Gomes, and she works as a lead machine learning engineer at Omdena. So she's absolutely from a very niche skill, and I'm so excited to host you. Rosanna is a PhD in astrophysics, currently dedicating her career to technology for social impact. She is very passionate about working with AI in partnership to the humanitarian sector and impact startups, having experience with being a lead machine learning engineer and project manager in projects on disaster management, renewable energies, and sustainability, among other topics. Rosanna's another great passion is empowering women and young scientists into the world of AI. In her free time, she offers advice on getting into AI for changing careers into AI, both through calls and by the recommendation of the week series about AI for good and career change on LinkedIn. So it's absolutely fascinating to hear about your experiences in both renewable energy, sustainability, and AI for good. And of course, I'll also try to get some insights on astrophysics. What do you think about where is it's going and how data science can help? So it's over to you, Rosanna. If you want to introduce yourself, give a big background on how you started your journey on data science. Just go ahead.
Thank you, Shamishta. It's a true pleasure to be here, and it's always nice to, just share a little bit of my story and also experience with others, and just get to, you know, uh, come back to that moment where I decided to change careers and so on. So yeah, as I said, I am an astrophysicist. So I've been working in research and in astrophysics for about 10 years, and I'm actually still do that on the side. And but a couple of years ago, I decided to, apart from my passion for astrophysics, to also understand what is going on in the world. So, for example, what kind of problems our society faces and so on. And so for me, it was the moment that I decided to, okay, I wanted to be an astronomer since I was 9.
Oh,
And I became an astronomer. So
how
I
is
thought
it?
like, hey, yeah, I wanted to save the sun. I had this very funny story. I found out that the sun is dying like in billions of years, and I was like, oh no, I need to do something about it. So I became an astronomer because of that, and then I started to realize there are so many other problems that we as a society face nowadays with, climate change and misinformation and so many other things. And then I started to realize that all those skills that I got from physics and from research in academia could also be used for society as well. So last year I joined Omdena. So Omdena is a platform for AI for social impact. And we have several projects with mostly with startups and also NGOs. And so I've been working with them for almost a year now, and getting involved in all sorts of projects, usually focused more in sustainability, because this is a topic that for me is very important, and climate change, but also in so many other projects about vulnerability and society and so on. So it's been a great journey, and I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah. So looking forward to learn from you. That's all our objective. I'm sure the viewers are also looking forward to it. So can you share a most useful application or use case that has yielded huge benefits to your organization, be it anywhere, like the areas which you have worked, sustainability, vulnerability, climate change?
Mhm. So I don't know if it was the most useful, but for sure a project that for me was very dear was a project in collaboration with the World Resources Institute, and it was a project about climate change, about nature-based solutions. So, for example, how you can create solutions for urban or non-urban problems. Sorry, that are sustainable. So, for example, we have nowadays the overheating in cities, and we have the green rooftops and so on. So this is helps to cool the buildings, and at the same time still bring more like a green to those cities and so on. And so in this project, we were trying to understand what is so WRI is a nonprofit organization, and we were trying to understand within their network of partners, when they want to implement those nature-based solutions in some part of the world, which of those partners could be the best for helping them with that, and also to understand the whole problem of nature-based solutions. So in this project, one thing that I contributed, like these are projects that are always done with a lot of collaborators from all over the world. So I was one of them, but of course, like all of them also have the credit. And in this part of the project, I was working with building recommender systems to try to understand what region of the world they want to build a solution, what kind of problem they want to solve, and so on. And then what is the best organization within their network that can help them with that. And this saves a lot of time, because it's something that used to be very, I mean, of course, you need a knowledge in the field and so on, but it used to be like very specific to have a lot of persons like looking manually into all the list of several collaborators and so on. And then in this way, it just automates the process and makes it much faster for everybody.
And do you want to say anything on the data of what anybody would try to look at while building such climate change or recommenders? Any insights you would
Sure.
like to share?
Yeah, so in this case, we were working with techniques like web scraping. So directly from their list of organizations, so that they had their website, and we needed to go through their partners and then like go inside the partners of the partners and so on. And in this way, try to understand. So the data was basically scraped from their website. And then we had to use, of course, text analysis, so natural language processing techniques. Other parts of the project, of course, used other techniques, but the data came basically from their websites, of course, with their authorization for it. But that was the idea to run those analysis from the text data that was collected from there. So.
Yeah, that's great. So anything on the disaster management or sustainability that you can help us to understand what can be the use cases, or how we should look at those sites also? Because I never had any experience on disaster management, sustainability. These are very unique areas where NGOs, you get that opportunity to do such work.
Sure. In my case with disaster management, this was actually my first project within Omdena. So this was like for me, this is still one of my favorite stories that I remember, because it was also like, as you said, I was just coming out of academia with this very sometimes abstract or far away from real world applications. And then I got into a project that was about cyclone response.
Oh.
So this was again within a team. We had like I think 35 people in the team and the idea was to. So this was a project in collaboration with the World Food Program, the innovation accelerator here in Munich, actually, and in Germany. And the idea of this project was to try to understand which kind of items WFP has to send to an emergency, so to a cyclone emergency specifically. So, for example, whenever there is a disaster in the world, not only cyclones, but many others, floods and earthquakes and so on, the humanitarian organizations send a team of operations to help the people, by sending items, for example, for food, because everything is destroyed, or sending like tools for rebuilding the locations, or blankets and so on. And our goal in this project was to understand, to estimate the number of people that are affected by these cyclones. And like this was something that was done like globally. And ultimately understand from the guidelines from WFP and also from WHO, actually, what are the items that we need to send. So like first we had one step that was understanding the number of people affected, or estimating the number of people affected with machine learning models. And then in the second step, using those guidelines to calculate the number of items. For example, if there are this number of people affected, how many liters of water do we need to send? How many kilograms of rice we need to send, and things like this. So in this project, in terms of data, we also used open source data. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, we had to collect data, of course, related to cyclones. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
pressure or wind speeds and so on. And this we got from open source data
Mm-hmm.
available, like databases available around the world specifically for this kind of disasters. And we also got some social economic indicators from the World Bank, actually. So, for
From
example,
World Bank. Mm-hmm.
mhm. So, for example, they also have a very nice API. It's one of my favorite databases, and
Mm-hmm.
there, like the World Bank has like about 1,000, more than 1,000 indicators for all sorts of topics, and
Mm-hmm.
we selected the ones that we thought could be interesting, could be relevant for estimating the number of affected, and turned out that, for example, Human Development Index and the rural population actually have a very strong correlation with the number of people that end up being affected when there is a cyclone.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of something very interesting for me because coming from again from an academic perspective, like I seen this like a very very real world
Most.
perspective was really interesting. So
Yeah, that's absolutely. I also find it very interesting. And of course, I will carry some of the insights if I ever get a chance to work on these areas. And anything you want to cite on sustainability, other than cyclones, disaster management, an example, if,
mhm.
what the use cases?
Sure. So another very interesting topic of sustainability that I also had the chance to work last year was about waste management. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
there are many regions in the world that we have a lot of illegal waste dump sites. So, for example, like we have
Mm-hmm.
nowadays there are like these movements, for example, for going and cleaning the beaches and like make the places look nicer and so on. So this was a project in collaboration with Trash Out. So this is like also an NGO that has an app where people can take a picture
Mm-hmm.
whenever there is let's say you are walking on the street and then you see trash in a place that is not like a dustbin or something, then you can just like take a picture, and the app will store the location, and you
Mm-hmm.
also like store the picture and so on. And from that, our team, we had of course like several tasks. One task was working with computer vision. So, for example, to create a new functionality in the app. So, for example, now I have this glass
Mm-hmm.
here and I want to get rid of it. And then I can take a picture of the glass, and then the model would understand, oh, this is glass. And ultimately, the best place for you to get rid of this glass is in this location. So that was the idea. We developed the model for the computer vision model for classifying. We had, I think, 14 options of classification in terms of plastic, um, batteries, glasses, and so on. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was a very cool project because we had like also a big team. I don't remember how many people we were, but like around 40 people. And one of the things that we needed to do for this model was, for example, annotate the data. So we didn't have a data set of trash, and then we had to create our own data set. So we had to go over the internet and find
Mm-hmm.
images of, for example, I
Okay.
was working with
Mm-hmm.
annotating like batteries and so on. So I had to find lots of images of batteries and then put the bounding boxes around it and so on, and say like, hey, this is a battery, so that the model would later on understand. And so this was a very cool project too as well.
Yeah. So what are the ways? Yeah. And you also had to separate different kinds of waste. Is it like biodegradable, non-biodegradable, what are actually very
Yeah.
harmful, anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. We had, I think we had something that was hazardous trash, and this was a very hard one because it's not so
Waste.
easy to find images, yeah, about it. But and we also had a different
Mm-hmm.
analysis that was about risk of some places becoming a dump site. So, for example, estimating the risk geographically based on the like we had the data from the threshold this app, and then we could estimate from some regions of the world what region would have like a higher risk because it was maybe a dump site before, or because it was close to a region that was a dump site before, and so on. So that was a very interesting analysis
Great.
to just understand how the trash is created in the world, and what kind of trash is developed in the world, and in which regions and so on. So quite nice.
Quite nice, quite exciting to look at how AI for good can be used in different applications. We only think of ethical AI, but these areas are equally very important. And not only why, what are the challenges do you find when you you have used in several instances in helping the environment through disaster management, sustainability projects, ethical AI. So what do you think? What do you think is the most challenging aspect of it when you deal with AI for good, building models for AI
So
for good?
mhm. So I think that funnily enough, the challenges are still very human. So, for example, whenever we are working, at least from the perspective of like working with nonprofit organizations and with with the humanitarian sector, one of the challenges that we still have is like we have those kind of like this historical problem that we have the people from natural sciences as like this very like a technical mathematical mentality building the AI models in one on one side, and then on the other side you have all the humanitarian people that have maybe more like a social sciences background and so on, and that they are very like strong in understanding the context, and these are like two different worlds. Like we have the people that understand the humanitarian side of it, and the other ones that understand the technical side of it. And sometimes even the language that we use is quite different, like to say the same thing. And then, like for example, when we have to build models, we have all those features that we have to put as like for the model to learn. And data scientists usually don't have this domain knowledge, so to say, like this notion of what is important to be present in the models to just make the models perform nicely. And in this sense, and on the other hand, the humanitarian people, and of course, like not everybody, but like also have this sometimes not a clear notion of AI is, of what AI can do, and we have also this like very kind of buzzwordy. It's kind of like all like the data scientists just want to come here and just do the work for us, and like so there's still a little bit of mismatch of expectations and so on. So like I think we could really profit from having more conversations and having like the humanitarian experts becoming more familiar with AI, and not necessarily to the point of becoming the person building the models, if that's not what they want to do, but like just understanding the concepts. And at the same time, also the people that are data scientists that want to work more in this society oriented to just become more familiar with contexts and so on. So it's something that is very important.
So how do you explain them? Means, is it like that's the challenge which you have faced? Means, how do you overcome them? Means, do you have any tools to explain them, dashboards, or just because they're it's how do you go about it, or do you have to just explain in plain words?
Yeah, I think one crucial ingredient in this project, like this collaborations between data scientists and the humanitarian sector, is the key is to have like a very good project managers, like the people that will be making the communication. So the people that will really come and say to take the time to understand what is it that the people need, like what is it that this organization needs, and making sure that the data science team gets this, and having all this information and so on. So like for example, as you said very well, like dashboards are extremely important because like you can come and say, hey, my model has this performance because XYZ, but someone that is not from this field will not understand what you're talking about. So but if in the other hand you come and say, like, here is what we are predicting, and here is an image of that, then the domain experts can start to have a conversation and ask questions and so on. So this is very important. Like we sometimes don't really appreciate how much we need to have this notion of like a communication and visualization and like in data
Yeah.
science in general.
Yeah,
for
I think
sure.
those interpretability tools also, if we can look at that and how they explain our feature importances and what is actually needed and conveying them to the right business or the right stakeholders, in your case, maybe the humanitarian persons who are working, that would be really extremely helpful for data scientists to pursue that forward, right? Yeah.
For sure, and it really depends because, for example, in the humanitarian sector, sometimes just like the expectations have to be also very clear because, for example, I had already situations in which you want to do like super advanced, complicated things, but what this organization really needs is something that is actually very simple. It might be just data analysis and like a data collection even sometimes. So, and I don't mean like as something as simple as in is easy or is less important, but you can already add a lot of value to an organization just by introducing analytics into it, so to say. And this is
Yeah.
also part of data science and so on. So,
So yeah, they go all hand in hand together, data, big data, data science, as well as analytics. Yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
So, what do you advise organizations that should follow to implement more models that are beneficial for the society?
So there are many ways to see this. So, for example, we have like organizations that are like not only non-profit, also like that are also doing sustainable solutions, and so this is already pretty good. But I think that we have to become more familiar, for example, with the sustainable development goals that we have nowadays, and
Mm-hmm.
just try to align. For example, we have nowadays still like this very strong for-profit mentality, and I don't mean it like as in a bad way necessarily, but I think we really need to add into the equation for having a successful organization to really start to see what is the footprint that this organization has in the world,
Mm-hmm.
because you might be doing something wonderful in a way, but maybe 15 years from now, like the
Mm-hmm.
bad things that happen in the world are also consequence of this kind of like business model and so on. So it's
Exactly.
important to try to look into how can your organization become more sustainable, and even if it's not possible, like how can you start to collaborate or can start to support other organizations there
Mm-hmm.
are. So like we are really like nowadays we really need to have we have this connection in the world. We have, especially now because of the pandemic, we already have quite more than before, but like we really need to start collaborating with each other and supporting more initiatives that are more sustainable. So that's very important, at least in my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Means alone we can't do so much. We have to collaborate, get data, and together we can see what best we can do for the entire world and what best we can do for the entire world and how AI can enable us to thrive in the future. So we talked about the different tech stacks, the machine learning models. Anything you would like to add, like in terms of technology or ML models or anything analytics? Any specific pointers do you want to give us?
Sure. So of course, like the tech stack that we need for each project will depend a lot on the problem that you're trying to solve. But just to mention a couple of things, like for example, for disaster management, it's very common that you need to have like a geospatial analysis and some notion, of course, not for everything, but like some notion of even satellite images. Because, for example, if you think about it, when there is an emergency, it's very often that people cannot reach the location so easily, like by land, because maybe the streets are blocked or there is some problem and so on. So we can really rely on technologies, for example, satellite imagery and so on. And if you can have AI for or geospatial analysis also for just like automate this process, because if you have an emergency you need to do things fast, because like the faster you are, like the more people you can help and so on. So having this automation through AI with geospatial analysis, with computer vision and so on, this is very important for disaster management. And of course, like I just comment, like disaster management is something that unfortunately we will have to invest quite a lot as a society, because if you think about it,
Yeah.
like now we have climate change, and even like a best case scenario, if you would even by today set our CO2 emissions to zero, we would still have a lot of problems in the future because we already have quite a lot of damage that we did. So we are expected to have more extreme weather events, being it droughts and
Yeah.
floods and cyclones and so on. So we really need to be prepared for this, because this will be happening, and this will be happening in regions in the world that are already very much underprivileged. So these people will need help, and then if they will need help fast, and then if we can use AI or other technologies to just make this process faster, this is just like great for us as like a great achievement as a society. And in terms of, for example, other topics, for example, when you think about vulnerability, and I think nowadays we have this entire space on the internet. So we have
Mm-hmm.
people connecting and talking. I have many friends that I'm now in Germany. I am from Brazil, and I have many friends in India. I have many friends in Nigeria, and so on. And just having this notion that we are all connected, and all those communications happen in a kind of like in this online environment, like that we
Mm-hmm.
communicate via text, that we communicate via audio, and so on. We have a lot of information of we have like people tweeting all the time and so on, and we have a lot of stories out there, and we have a lot of information about what is happening in the world, and also in our minds and so on. So like text analytics and natural language processing and so on can be very important tools to also help us to understand just like what are the feelings of people nowadays. For example, we are here in this live and so on, and we have like people writing, and we have people asking questions, and really discussing what is happening in the world. And this is something that used to happen like maybe 30 years ago, just like in like real conversations, like in person and so on. And this wouldn't even be possible these days, like without the pandemic and so on. So like
Yeah.
just having this notion of like natural language processing can be so powerful to understand the society nowadays, because like we have all the opinions of not of all people, of course, but we have lots of opinions out there via
Mm-hmm.
text and so on. So yeah, and in terms of deployment, I think that, for example, I mentioned before that in terms of analytics, we can use a lot of dashboards or visualization techniques. We can use, I don't know, Tableau, Power BI, or what is your favorite
Mm-hmm.
visualization tool for just having these conversations, having this understanding of what is going on. But also, like for example, in other sectors as healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
or many others, you can deploy those models into some specific applications, and this can
Mm-hmm.
be also helpful. So for example, even like last year, I also worked on another project that was about creating recommender systems to help people to match volunteering opportunities. And
Mm-hmm.
this is done via an application on your phone. And back when in the days that I was in college and so on, I had to go into some organization and fill a form and talk to people and so on. And nowadays we are just making all these things so much easier. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So things are easier and more to with the power of AI and bringing in predictability in uncertainties and things which we cannot predict. So, what do you foresee in future automation, IoT, and robotics industry where it can be applied?
So it's starting to have quite a lot of applications. So I particularly never worked in something so specific, but when you think about it, like now in terms of automation, you have, for example, farming, you have agriculture, and all this kind of work is something that used to be like very manual. You have to have someone going there and seeing the plants and seeing if the plants are healthy, or taking care of the animals and so on. And of course, like this won't be something that will be completely substituted, at least at the moment. But we are starting to see this automation, like these machines coming to these fields, and really having like for example, computer vision, for having like just a robot that goes around collecting images of, for example, of the plants, and then doing something about it. So like combined with some other technology, for example, IoT or other, to okay, if there is something wrong with this plant, you just take an action on this. So this is something that is not only like a passive, like observing something, but really taking an action. And this is something that for sure technology combined with some of those AI techniques are really coming into hand. And of course, like we have other sectors as healthcare, this is also happening as well. So that's really exciting for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, completely agreed. And healthcare also, there's a lot of things happening. So there is a viewer question. Let's take one question, which is
Sure.
here. So, somebody is asking, like his name is Gautam Rai, would like to know more details about climate changes and how AI can help us in that particular area.
Mhm.
So,
So there are many things that we can do in terms of climate change. So this thing, for example, with disaster response, as I mentioned, like this is kind of like an indirect way of helping, because you can take care of those actions, like all those, sorry, all those consequences of climate change. But of course, like you can use, for example, there was a very interesting project that happened in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, also from Dena, there was about looking into tweets from young people and so on to understand how people are perceiving the change of, for example, this change of energy, like going to more like cleaner energies and so on. There is also like some ways of fighting climate change. There are, for example, nowadays also initiatives to, for example, see how we can uh, make students understand what are the sustainable development goals that they feel more aligned with. And you
mhm,
can use recommender systems to, for example, try to tailor their studies in a way that, for example, I feel more aligned with cleaner energies than
mhm,
maybe other sustainable development goals. And then in my studies or my school, they can try to help me to you learn more like about this kind of topic, because maybe in the future I might be more engaged in this.
mhm.
So yeah, there are many other ways, like
So gaining a more domain knowledge about sustainable environments and then finding out the right data sets, right? What you would suggest.
exactly.
Yeah, there's another question coming up. On a scale of 0 to 10, how important it is to have psychological knowledge, especially for the AI inventions, looking at the disaster management, for example,
Ooh, psychological knowledge. I don't know necessarily what
or
it means.
physiological knowledge. Yeah, I think I spelled it correctly. Phycological. What is phycological?
What is psychological? Sorry. Um, yeah, I also I'm not sure if that wasn't. But what I can say is like in terms of, for example, in disaster management, you need to have for sure some domain knowledge. And by domain knowledge, I mean uh, you have to have someone that is familiar with this kind of operations. Like with if it's familiar with disaster management, you cannot just take some phycol-
Yeah. What?
phycology. I'm sorry that.
Psycho. Psycho. Phycology.
I'm sorry, I was too confused. But maybe it's a word that I don't know, so I apologize for that. But coming back, I think it's a matter of like knowing, and this is by the way for everything, like knowing that your domain, like knowing that, for example, if you're dealing with disaster management in some coastal area, this will be different than in like just like the socioeconomics and so on, the demographics even is going to be different than if you're dealing in another area like that maybe is more like urban and so on. So the kind of like impact that you're going to have, or for example, if you have like in poorer regions in the world, it might be that you have way more damage than in like richer regions, because it might be that the buildings are already prepared in those regions, and whereas in these poorer regions they might not be. And then those people are much more vulnerable, and then you have to have like some specific ways of dealing with the problem, like just by understanding the social economic context. So I don't know if this
Mhm.
answers your question, but it's more or less what I had in mind.
I think that must be the answer, right? That must be the what he is looking for. Tushfi. Yeah. Sorry
Yeah,
if
there's
I
another one.
pronounce your name wrong. I just,
You can also just reach out later, and then I will be happy to answer as well.
yeah, yeah,
If it is.
sure. Reach out to Rosanna. She's available in LinkedIn. Yeah. So, have you ever applied AI ethics? We talked about sustainability, disaster management, how uh, uh, we are handling those data, where is it's happening, where it could be more disastrous. Anything you would like to cite on AI ethics that we should be aware while dealing, handling those problems?
So for sure, I think in terms of ethics, there are like many problems that we still, for me at least, is the problem that we still need to figure out in terms of AI. Because when you think about it, nowadays we still have many models uh, being created under the narrative of just a minority of people. And
Mm-hmm.
by a minority of people, I mean like the people like that don't necessarily understand all the context. So, for example, we have like I don't know white Western people building models for solving problems in regions of the world that do not necessarily they understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean like I mean like that it's something evil or anything, but it's just that, for example, right now I am working in a project about implementing renewable energies in Africa, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like a fascinating project. And one of the things that is very exciting about it is that we have lots of collaborators in the project that are African, meaning that they know their continent much better than I do, because
Yeah.
I, for example, the kind of problems or the kind of like scenario that they have is something that they can understand better, and this is like one of the powers that we have in this project, just having
Mm-hmm.
people that understand the context, as I was saying before. And this is something like that is not very common. This is something that I particularly like a lot about Omdena, that we really have the people that represent those regions that we are trying to solve the problems. But unfortunately, this is still not the case in many places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So and even like many applications. So, for example, we have all sorts of things like these applications that don't consider that, I don't know, women have periods or something like this. So it's something that because they are made by men, you know, like, so it's very important to really have this notion, and we have a lot of biases still. So this is something that for sure we need to change. And even when you think about, for example, in terms of ethics, that 10% of the women, we have only 10% of women in computer science and in AI.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really not much, you know, like, I mean, I come from physics and it's already pretty bad there, but in computer science, I think this is one
It's
of the
much
fields that is
worse.
the worst. It's one of the fields that I think is the worst for women. And then how can you have like a model that is trying to help women with something and they are just not heard? So because, you know, like the models can only do as good as the data that is put there, or as
Exactly.
the feature is put there. And then if we have the people selecting the features that not necessarily understand the context, this is simply never going to work. You know, like you can use the most efficient, wonderful model that you have, but it cannot do much more than the
Yeah.
data that you put for it.
If the
So
data is skewed, yeah, absolutely. We have another question. How do you rate the industry academia partnership in the field of AI? In your opinion, is future AI research more industry driven than academia driven?
cool. That's a very good question. Thank you so much. So yeah, coming from academia myself, I think I still see a lot of, this is a very like a good thing. I see a lot of people super excited about AI and starting to do it in industry. So this is something that I honestly didn't know back in the days, that this was a possibility. Um, so I would say that the pace that AI in academia and AI in industry have are quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that, like, I think in industry we always have this notion of directing whatever solution we have into a product, and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be like in, I don't know, like I know that in research in industry doesn't need to be like the only goal, but is also one of the goals.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in academia, like I think that things are a bit slower, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean like that we might take more time to really think about where we are building and so on. So it's starting like in especially some fields, for example, NLP. You see like we are quite at the edge of what is being done so far, and like the models are really becoming like crazy huge and so on. And at some point we start to have the problem of resources. So
Mm-hmm.
then it comes to this point that like industry has resources to
Exactly.
to build these models, to develop these technologies that really require a lot of like for example a lot of cloud or a lot of power, computer power and so on. So I still like to think that we might come to a point that we have a collaboration between those these two institutions, so to say. So it is something that can be quite exciting to see where it goes. But if I would have to bet, I would say that industry at least has like though might not have this very like more fundamental trying to understand really what are the goals and so on, but like has still this very strong like oriented power of making things happen. But just like a comment, like for example, like in this part of ethics, I still think that academia is doing like a better job.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is like academia is an institution for thought, for like discussions and so on, and they are extremely necessary. So I really hope to see like more of those collaborations, so the academics can come and give also like some directions to the people in industry that are building those solutions
Exactly.
and so on.
So yeah, together we can build better models because all the research that is happening is still with the academia than industry. So industry is more relying on the paper published, patents, and building models.
Exactly.
So of course, of course. So, what about what is your advice for students studying astrophysics? What do you think? How data science has its vision in astrophysics? Because you come from a very niche background. Again, it's very difficult to find. I would for not find anybody coming from astrophysics.
So yeah, thank you. So I think that I see a lot of people transitioning. So there's this very funny thing that I don't know nowadays, but at least when I was in college, we still had this very strange mentality in Brazil that when if you leave academia is because you're a failure and so on. And then I came to Germany, and we don't have this mentality here. So this is actually when I started to realize that I could do other things. I came here for my PhD, and so I started to realize that it's totally fine if I go to industry. It's totally fine if I do other things. So and then I start the second question that came to me is like, okay, so if I can go to industry, what skills do I have, and what kind of work I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for someone that comes from physics or astrophysics or engineering and so on, like data science and AI are like really straightforward paths, career paths, because we learn a lot of those skills already. Sometimes we don't even realize, and it took me a while to understand that I already had many of those skills. So, for example, one of the first things we learn in machine learning is regression, and we just
Mm-hmm.
call it a different name. But this is the same thing that we learned in the first semester of physics or second semester. It doesn't matter, but like something that we learned quite early on. Um, and all this like critical thinking, like I like to say that like physicists are or like chemists and so on, but like are professional data analysts, because when we do research, this is pretty much what you're doing, like you're doing data analysis. So like having this kind of like background already gives you a lot of skills for
Mm-hmm.
doing data science in general. And of course, I think one of the things we lack quite a bit still, I mean, it depends on the topic that you're studying or working, but physicists especially, is this real world experience.
Exactly.
So, like, because I always say that it might sound quite nice and so on, and it is for sure, it's very fascinating. But if you go to a job interview and you start to say to talk about the stars and so on, like, I mean, it's very philosophical and beautiful, but it can be a bit tricky, if you are transitioning to industry, because you really need to find your real world experience. So I would say that for someone that is coming from physics and wants to go in this direction outside of academia, it would be good to, first of all, identify what are the skills that you already have, and what are the ones that you don't, because these are the ones that you're going to have to learn. And also try to make an effort to get involved in projects that are more real world. Like in my case, my first one was the one with the cyclones, but like it can be something that is like your interest and so on. So I hope.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Getting real world experiences is more important when you are even in research also. If you get some industry data sets and try it out modeling and see how it is, how we can explain them to the stakeholders, that's absolutely important. Anything you would like to give a vision on astrophysics? Any students, I don't know who have as they has joined on astrophysics, if they want to model, do this regression, classification, or clustering basic models, or computer vision will apply in astrophysics also, right? I hope so.
For sure, for sure. Like not only in astrophysics, but in physics in general. So
Hmm.
we now, I think that there's this other side of AI that is like really about making things efficient. So, for example, I am an astronomer. I was working more in the theory part, so I was building models and so on for describing stars. But I had a lot of colleagues that were observational astronomers. So, like people that really take the images,
Hmm.
that go analyze the images, and we used to have a lot of people
Hmm.
analyzing things by eye, like really taking a piece of paper and looking like, hey, this is a spectrum of a star and blah blah blah. And the power that AI has to really
Galaxy, stars.
exactly to really
Hmm.
like make all this process much faster in a way that those astronomers, those researchers can actually take the time to for the more intellectual part, for the really the interpretation of that, but not by having to just like pretty much like as the doctors that you have like the medical image and you don't need to have someone looking to I don't know how many
Hmm.
thousand images, but instead just analyzing what it comes out of this. And I think this makes the entire research project, research process in general much more efficient. And of course, nowadays you also have like I hope you guys saw that if you are into astronomy that we have like all the rovers coming to Mars. We
Hmm.
just had like another one coming a couple of days ago, I think 2 days ago. And when you have something, can you imagine like we are sending like robots to another planet very far away, and then we cannot really rely on having a
Exactly.
joystick to make the things like a work like a remote control. So it's extremely important to have AI, for example, like you mentioned, computer vision, to just like so those robots we really need to see, because if whatever happens with the connection with the humans here, they will need to find a way to like keep going. And then and I think this is the power of automation also in this kind of like space exploration and so on.
So there's a
So
question regarding this, since you talked about Mars rover landing, right? So can you explain how AI may have played a role in making this mission possible?
I'm afraid I don't know too much to say, but what I can say is that one of the I forgot the name of the rover now, was Prosperity, no, I forgot. But uh, one of the things that they did in this mission was to build the first helicopter on Mars. So apart from the rover, there was
Hmm.
another small robot that was like a helicopter. I think they had like a about or almost 2 kilograms and so on. So it's like very light. And this helicopter has the mission of collecting
Hmm.
data from Mars, from images and so on. And if you think about computer vision, like I mean, we do this pretty much here on Earth, like for satellite images, for other purposes and so on. But it's the same exact technology that you can use also for collecting information about Mars. And of course, if you can collect information and use AI not only to take pictures but also to make conclusions, for example, of what kind of, for example, you can use classification for having a notion of like what kind of soil is that, or what kind of like geographical structure. This gives you a lot of information much faster than having to have again like some scientist going there and looking to the 10,000, probably more than that, like millions of images that you take
Mhm.
from another planet and so on. So that's pretty exciting.
That's pretty interesting insights. Thank you so much. Any advice for women? Because you are also an advocate for women in AI. I didn't introduce you that in that respect, but that's also you are trying for more engagement or movement in the field of AI, right? So, any advice to them?
Sure.
Um,
For sure. So, yeah, one of the things that I do in my free time is to have calls. Like, I mean, not only with women, by the way, but like I have like calls with students. I have calls also a lot of with women. And there is this one particular thing that I find very kind of like sad in those conversations. And it is that sometimes I talk to people that know so much. No joke, like sometimes they know like a lot of like advanced things that I don't even know, and so on. And we still have this very strong feeling that we don't know enough, that we
yeah,
are not enough. And believe me, I also have this very often too. And it's something that you, I mean, it's totally fine if you are learning more things because you want to, because you are curious and so on. But I think that is very uh, something that we really need to change in society to understand. I know that not only women has have that, like of course, like men or other
hmm,
groups can also experience this. Like I think that the more minority you are, it becomes like really hard to understand that you have a lot of other challenges apart from learning, and it's extremely important to have to keep reminding yourself that you know that you are enough. Like I actually have this very nice. Let me just show you. I have this ring here. Like I don't know if you
hmm,
can see,
yeah,
and
yeah.
my ring says I am enough. And this is something that I always like. I have it now, like just to as a reminder and so on. But it's something that we. What I try to do is to every time I think like, oh my god, I don't know anything and so on, and to just look back and have like a kind of like a notes for myself of I've learned this, I did this, and so on. So like a celebrate every step of your learning journey, and especially for the people that are changing careers and so on and or starting in a new field, it can be very tough, you know, like we all are learning something and it's uncomfortable to be in this position of being the person that like a, if you have already a career and so on, then come back to be the junior and so on. And I think it's important that we learn to understand that that's okay, and that like things evolve, and we just need to take some time and have a little bit of patience to see things starting to happen, because there is no reason why they wouldn't happen, you know, even if the entire world is telling you not. So
Yeah, it happens sometimes. The entire world is against you, but you have to fight the odds. And I'm sure if you have enough hard work, if you have put enough hard work, there's no substitute. You are going to succeed one day. Nobody can
yeah,
stop you.
exactly. And I think that like finding a support system, like finding like there are so many organizations out there, especially for women, to support women. Like there is like a women who code, women in AI, and like a AI girls or something like a girl script, and so many others in India as well. That are like supporting women in all ages. Like I think these AI girls, I participated in their group before. Like they have like programming sessions for young girls that are coming out of high school, and and then you have like so many other organizations that are really supporting women. And then when you start to talk about things and you start to realize that those problems that you face are is not you, you know, you're not the problem, but this is a very common thing, this is just wrong, you know. Like I think this is very important to kind of notice and realize that you are not the problem, the system is the problem.
Systems.
And it's not because the system is wrong that this has to stop you. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great discussion, and it's my pleasure to host you. I don't see any questions here. If anybody has anything to ask to the viewers, please post your questions. Otherwise, if you if I have missed to ask you anything you would like to add and convey this message, because this stays in YouTube and I'll be posting, sharing again in LinkedIn, so that more people watches this, because it means again, it's a very niche skill, and the projects you have worked on, I'm sure most of us which in industries are we deal with common problems like retail, banking, but from disaster management and sustainability, it's of course people should know what are the things that they can contribute towards the society to for building a better world.
Exactly. So I think that my final comment will be that first of all, like to make a difference in the world, you don't need to be, like the best programmer in the world. You don't need to be a PhD and so on. Like you can just have the will to make a difference, and it starts with that, and then all the learning comes from that. So there are many nice organizations out there that you can volunteer, that you can help with your skills, and you can even like build your skills within, so that you can just start to learn from there and get involved with other people that also have the same mindset. So, for example, like within Omdena, I met so many wonderful people. Like I made so many good friends that I talk literally every day, and that can help me. So, like for example, with the things that I am learning that I also don't know, and then I can like just come to this person and say, "Hey, can you help me?" So this is how we learn, and this is how we build a better world. Having this community mindset, having this collaboration mindset, and so if any of you want to, just learn a little bit more about those organizations, or just want to maybe some tips of where to start, you can feel free to reach out. And also, like I think it's important that we try to think what are the things that move us, what are the topics that makes us really feel motivated to work at, because this is something that is very important. Like if you want to make a difference in something, and even if you want to like just become data scientists and so on, it is a hard path, like I mean it's a lot of things to learn. Like the tech tools that we need to learn are always changing, so we need an extra motivation to keep going and usually get involved in meaningful projects that maybe you are tired and whether you think like hey, this is really important, like I really want to create something that will help people.
Perfect.
So this
Mhm.
is usually like yeah, the best way to go. But
Yeah.
I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Your insights are absolutely very much worth in this real world. We get tired sometimes, we lose motivation, but ultimately we have to be get self motivated to keep us going. Otherwise, again, we won't be able to reskill ourselves every day.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm so much happy to host you, and I'm sure you will be working on much more interesting projects that we can again talk about again in future sessions down the line. Absolutely fantastic. Okay. If
Thank you
you
so
have
much.
no more questions, let's end this session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a nice weekend, everybody.
Yeah,
See you.
thank you. Same to you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.